Hello, everyone. I am Simone Deloach.
And I'm Dennis Tardan.
And this is the Six Box, a platform in which we have a conversation around the dynamics of our differences. I am a young Black female.
And I'm an old white man. And within the context of these 6 cultural boxes, we are having conversations, current conversations, because we're doing this on a weekly basis.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
All right, Simone, it's your turn. I want you to kick off the show this week with
Okay.
what are we going to talk about first?
Sure. So I followed through with your feedback, right? Asking my friends, hey, what do you want to know from an old white man? Here we are. And I'm having this conversation separate, but also just in collaboration of your proposal to me. International Women's Day is coming up. I'm helping a friend put together some products that she can promote. And a lot of what I'm finding to influence that is around women and women's rights and things of that nature. And so in conversation, I just proposed, are we ever going to have a time in our lives as Americans where the country honors and respects women? And like, how do we know that we fully committed to honoring them?
Yes.
So I wanted to bring that to the table today.
Well, I'm so glad you brought that to the table because Melissa and I, the other night, watched a film called about feminism and feminists. And so the rise to equality, what does this mean? What does this mean to have equal rights? And one of the challenges as an old white man, when I was growing up and I was in the heyday of the white male, which was from the 50s to 2000, when we dominated all of the boardrooms, all of in politics. We had most of the seats in Congress and in all the state houses, and that was really when we were there. And there is a fear among white men that if we allow more women and people and minorities, that we're going to be losing our share. And one of the things that is most dangerous or the most challenging within a society is whenever you take away something, or whether it's perceived as taking away something. And that's a challenge. Can you see how that would be perceived as fearful?
Yes.
And that's what goes through the minds of what I'm thinking when I talk to people. Now, that's not admitted by the men, because the men that I talk to don't want to really admit that that's what it is. But that's my sense, is that there is a real fear. This is where we see replacement theory. That the white man is being replaced. It's not, it's just that we're no longer having the same type of impact and influence that we had. And now we have to compete against a larger cohort, because women are that they come in, they're educated, they're working hard, they bring so much to the table. And now we're the ones that have to have, instead of just having me in there, we have to compete, and that competition is causing a great deal of fear.
Interesting that you're using the word compete, right? Because why? Right?
Exactly.
We all win when each of us are living to our best potential. And at that point, my wins are your wins, Dennis, and vice versa. Right? When I am
Exactly.
be successful and be helpful and live in my truth, that helps me to be better for everyone else around me that I'm influencing and impacting, and the same for you. And it's not a competition, right? The people that we touch and the people that see our podcast, whether it's today or 100 years from now, there's an impact there. And we're not necessarily competing with some of the top dog podcasters. We're just existing in the same space, doing receiving and giving out a message. Something that
Exactly.
came up when you talk about competition, something that came up after talking to a girlfriend about this, she mentioned the only person that is a threat to, for instance, the man, but in this case, the white man, is the white man. He's built a system that has always, and at times, because of other people, seems to be failing him. This expectation, right? This expectation that you have to be rich, you have to have the jobs, you have to have the cars, the money, the girls, the women.
Mm-hmm.
But even at the top, there's you still aren't happy. There's still depression. You still, I mean, the cause of the cases of suicide in our country, we don't talk about how that affects the men in our lives as much as we should.
Yeah.
It is affecting them just as much as it is affecting everyone else, if not more. And it's as if like the system that was built for men is destroying them. And so now there's a feeling of threat, and there's a sense of I have to compete. Well, the system was built by you. So changing the system would leave you to feel less competitive and leave you to feel a little more whole to be just yourself.
I love that, Simone, because and it's my one of the areas that I'm deeply interested in, and this is the idea that the patriarchy is built upon a zero-sum game. The pie is only so big. So therefore, there is a competition, because anytime that you get someone to come in, it's going to have to take a bite out of my pie. That's
Mm.
what's because the pie is only so big. What you're talking about, if I understand you correctly, and it's certainly what I ascribe to, is the concept of synergy, is that as we bring more ideas into the pie actually gets bigger, that there is more for us, for all of us. Now, I agree with you, this idea of saying, okay, because I'm fascinated by this, and especially since so many of the super rich, the billionaires are men, white men, or men of, as there are some men of color if they're from the Middle East, and some of the that we have, but still it's overwhelmingly men. But I just wonder, I wonder in this system, when we think of,
Mm.
is how much is enough?
Right.
Do we know, would someone, if I had $200 million,
Is that enough?
would that be enough? I mean,
Mhm.
that's enough for certainly generations into the future.
Sure.
There's certainly that for taking care of anything that I could materially want.
Mhm.
But what is my purpose for having that extra 100 million or that extra 500 million? And I don't know if that question ever gets asked. And so with us, one of the things that we have to ask, our program is sponsored by In Search of the New Compassionate Male, and one of the things that Clay Boykin, and I get to join him on some of the podcasts, is that the patriarchy wounds everyone.
Yes.
Men, what you were saying, men are wounded by the patriarchy because I cannot be just who I am. I'm wearing this lovely pink, this radiant pink, but I can be this out there, not ascribed masculine uh, stereotype. I can really be myself if I can be free. I don't have to conform in that sense. So I
Yes.
agree with you,
Yes.
and but it also,
Mm.
what does how do you look at us? How do you look at look at us in this? Can you do you see that there is the kind of depression and fear and challenge that is that is within us? And one of the things that so impresses me about all of the people of color I've ever known is the amount of compassion and grace that they have for me. And I'm going, how do you have that kind of patience when you see the kinds of inequity, and you see the kind that are there? How do you maintain that kind of patience?
Sure. Yes, I do see that with you, and and how I see it is with compassion to what you're saying. How do I have that kind of patience? I guess it's like if you've gone through it, then you know how to support it, right? Pain recognizes pain.
Hmm.
Empathy, it recognizes empathy. Growth recognizes growth. And so I can sit here and empathize with someone in your position with all of my heart. One, because I want to, and two, because I've been there before. I may not know exactly how you're feeling about it, and I may have some questions about what you're choosing to say and how you're saying it, but I can put myself in my own shoe from a past event and say, wow, like I know what that's like. I don't know exactly, but I know what that's like. You
That's wonderful. It is it is a stunning piece right now, Nicole, because Simone, I love calling you Nicole. I'll call you Simone.
I can't go.
Anyhow, Simone, it's a stunning piece for me because I want to make sure and understand where this fear is coming from in our society right now, because we appear to be diverging along lines of the white Christian
Mm,
nationalism and everyone else. That there appears to be lines to be able to that are looking to divide us so deeply, and so it feels like we have to find ways to make
mm,
sure to bring that together. And that's really one of the purposes that I want to have for our podcast, is to be able to see where are the places where people are attempting to sow division, and how can we bring it back together. I mean, so
mm,
because we're talking about things like uh, that we've spoken about in the past about critical race theory, and how why that's being seeded in as if this is something that is being taught everywhere, and it's just not. It's not being, and it's not being. And so where are you looking? Where are you looking at society right now, and you're seeing the kinds of divisions that we can bring
mhm.
together?
I'll start with something you just said. So how can we smooth out those really harsh dividing lines? It starts in a lot of places, but I think one place it can start is in our language.
Hmm.
Earlier, you were giving the description of the pie, and if somebody is to infiltrate into this space, they take a piece of, and you had said, my pie.
Hmm.
I think if we are able to change the language,
Yes.
because we're all on borrowed time. So is it really your pie, or is it something that you have been blessed, privileged,
Yes.
welcomed to keep, generationally passed down
Yes.
to have an ability to have, but who's it's not really mine and it's not really yours. It's and like you said, if we were to to look at it differently and say when one person comes in, the pie grows, we all get more.
Yep.
If we change the language, it's not your pie.
Do you know that, because that was completely unconscious.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
said my pie.
Yeah.
I said my pie. That is the unconscious that is just brought into that, that, okay, it's my pie and somebody's taking something out of my pie, but it's not. It's the pie. It's all of us in that together. And that's a difference in our language. And I never heard it until you pointed it out to me. I never knew that was in there. Thank you. What a gift.
Yes. Yeah. So
Well, it is, I was I found it interesting. This week I saw the former Secretary of State, Condoleezza Rice. She
yeah.
was talking, and she was talking about, did you happen to see
Good.
that piece? Tell
Mhm.
me what you thought about it. Would you describe it for me, what she said?
So my understanding is that because we had this conversation on our first episode,
Hmm.
what do I want to be considered? You had asked me,
Hmm.
and I said I like
How
to be
do,
called African American
yep.
preference, right?
Hmm.
Essentially, what the video was it was asking her the same question, and she
Hmm.
was saying it's black and white. It wasn't a choice for me to be here. Um, my lineage,
Right.
my people to be here. And so let's just keep it what it is. I am a Black person here in America. You are, because you also weren't originally here. So you are a
Exactly.
white person in America.
Exactly. But I
No.
came here of my own volition. We came here, my family came here because they chose to come here, but they chose to be able to come here.
Mhm. So another way to blur these lines, these really harsh lines to keep us separated, eventually, how are you going to put into boxes people that have multi-racial identities? You
Oh,
can't box, you can't, I mean, at this point, you can't box those people up.
no.
And we place boxes for comfort, right? The system has created boxes for comfort so that other people can identify with you or not identify with you.
Mhm.
And so, again, language, if we choose to say, I just want to know who you are as a person, I just want to know who you are as a presenting female, as somebody who identifies as, you know,
Mhm.
we can start to blur those lines. But yes, I watched the video and I thought that was interesting. And I loved it. And I, as a person who has flip-flopped that and be like, well, I like to be called African American, I have not necessarily shame or I have no hate for her wanting that. I like that she has a different opinion of mine. And I like what she said. I said, that's legit. I respect that. I still like to be called African American,
Yep.
but if I ever come across her, I will recognize her as a Black woman, and I'm okay with that.
Wonderful. How do
Mhm.
how do you in your life, how have you related to the word feminist and
Mm.
come into that? Because this is another word that has had a lot of emotional charge to it.
Sure, sure. I'm still learning, right? My understanding of feminist, being a feminist, is somebody who advocates for um the inequality, right, of gender politics, relationship dynamics, sexuality. And so it's a spectrum, just like most things.
Hmm.
I know feminists are not just women or people who identify as women. Men can also be feminists. It is advocating for an inequality that just so happens to be about
Hmm.
sex,
Yes.
asex.
Yes.
I've watched a few documentaries. I've educated myself. Right, there are seasons of our country that have divided us more significantly than others.
Hmm.
But it's kind of like, had we not had made that noise in the early 50s, early 60s, 70s, would we be where we are right now? If we didn't get ugly with
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
what
So
about
how
you?
do you and your friends, when you talk about being a feminist, how is that, how comfortable are you with that term or not with that term in your own life?
I don't know if we're sitting around saying, okay, it's time to talk about what it means to be a feminist. Again, I think it's just in our language of how we present ourselves,
Hmm.
how we behave, how we solve and resolve problems with the same or the opposite sex, how we view the world in general. I believe my particular friend group, my generation, it's different, but yet the same,
Hmm.
packaged differently, but we're all saying the same thing. I know that I deserve a raise, and it's like, shoot, girl, you better walk into the office and tell them what you're worth.
Yep.
Um, um, I mean, all kinds of things, what I will and will not tolerate in a relationship. That doesn't necessarily make me a, extreme feminist. It just means I know my equal rights as a partner, or equal, rights as a human caring for another human. I
Yeah.
just won't tolerate inequality.
Exactly.
Uh,
Yet there's baggage that is associated with feminism that we're
sure.
trying to figure out.
Mhm.
Just like there is baggage with the word black, there is baggage with the word white. There is baggage that we have that we go along,
Sure.
that we have. Let me ask one thing. I want to go into the old young piece
Sure.
because Don Lemon, who is a commentator for CNN, he's
Mm.
on the CNN morning show. He came on the air the other day, and he said Nikki Haley, who is 51 years old,
Mhm.
who is running for president, he said she isn't in her prime. he
Mm.
announced to CNN, he says, sorry, when a woman is considered to be in her prime, she's in her 30s or 40s or 50s. I mean, 30s or 40s. 20s, 30s, and 40s is when a woman is in her prime.
Mhm,
This
mhm,
was in reply to Joe Biden being 80 and being there. So I want to talk about the age differences. First, how do you look at men my age who are still not wanting to give up the power, not
mhm,
wanting to give up? When do you know, when can you see us? How do you see us
mhm,
in our 80s? The me and Mitch McConnell and Joe
mhm,
Biden and
mhm,
Orrin Hatch, for God's sakes. And when are we able to gracefully
mhm.
how are you and your cohort looking at us older men?
With that mindset, um, you get dismissed. You no longer are having relevance. You no longer have relevance in the conversation with that particular mindset. You're moving in circles, and we're trying to move forward. We're trying to move
Hmm.
up
Hmm.
lateral. I'm sorry, but you get left behind. I'm not going to sit and listen when I know that there are other individuals who will participate in a progressive conversation.
Hmm.
You've said what you said for 50, 60, 70 years now, and you're choosing to still eat the same Vienna sausage.
Yeah.
Let's upgrade. So personally, that's how I would move about it.
So are you ready to be able to see and so can you still see? I mean, when you look at Joe Biden at 80, when you look at me at 75, and you look at and you say, okay, well, guys, it's time to let go and turn it over to another
Mhm.
generation, and it's time to let to be able to bring them to bring another generation up, and for us to be able to do other things. Like I'm one of the things I want to do with the podcast is to be able to find ways to include and to bring others forward and know when it's gracefully a time for me to say, okay, I've done everything I can do as far as being on stage. Let
Right.
me see what I can do behind.
Mm-hmm. Interesting, because I think it segues back to we're going full circle with, will this country ever be able to honor and respect women?
Yes.
Forget gender, forget age. Can this individual get the job done?
Yes.
Are we tired of doing the same thing over and over again? At the end of the day, can this person get the job done? And I don't want to go, I don't want to digress. However, when we think about our last election, regardless of how people felt, I think at the end of the day, we should have been asking that question a lot more
Yes.
than who was more popular. Can they get the job done? Can we trust them? Have they shown, and communicated in a way? So, unfortunately for Lemon, his statement was ignorant and uncalled for.
Hmm.
Nobody's going to say anything about his age.
No.
But he does age himself with that mentality of thinking that that is what people care about. A
Yeah.
woman in her prime, women never stop being in their prime, excuse me. I can be
Thank you.
all 90 years old and be in a prime of my 90s. We
Mhm.
don't age like men do.
Yep. And
So
that is definitely the challenge. Well, thank you for episode 3
yes.
of the Six Box, Simone. There's so much that I need you to continue to talk about and continue to call me on
Mhm.
when you hear me, hear things that come out of my mouth, that whether they're conscious or unconscious, being able to call me on it, and for us to be able to have the trust that we can have a conversation. Because what I feel like one of the wonderful things, one of the graceful things about it is that I feel like I can be open and I can make a mistake around you. I can
Mhm.
say something thoughtless and unfeeling, and you can say, hold on a minute, Dennis. Let's rewind back and go back there because there is an assumption of goodwill
Mhm.
between us. And if we can spread that, if we can spread that assumption of goodwill and know that we can give each other some slack and we can work through and we're both trying to learn and bring our best, then goodness gracious, can you imagine what we could do?
Yes. Yes.
Well, thank you, Simone, and thank you everybody for
Mhm.
watching this episode of the Six Box. I'm Dennis Tardan,
And I'm Simone Deloach.
and we will see you all next time.